Mary, you have a little insight in Donnie Jr. for 100. Tell us about him from what you know.
Well, I kind of feel sorry for him because of the way he was raised. I watched Donnie and his ex-wife, raise him and their daughter Margie, and it was terrible. Okay, living conditions. They always had lice. They had scabies. They always had roaches. The kids weren't never taken care of. I'm really surprised that he and his sister even made it through that. You know what I mean? And at first he was getting in trouble there. Went to prison, doing drugs, following his dad's footsteps. He had went to a place called Mowita, and it was in Roy, Utah, and he was 13, 14 years old, maybe. Yeah. Yep. And he was constantly in and out of Mowita until he hit 18, and then he went to prison.
So, how is everyone? I hope you're all well. So, this is going to be a little bit of a rant, but first of all, let's put some context into it. And I want people to understand that when it comes to victims of crimes of a sexual nature, I understand fully. I have friends who were abused. There's countless people who are in my life who have been victims in some way or another to these types of crimes, and I've witnessed the devastation of it, including deaths off the back end of the abuse that they suffered. So I am fully versed in how this can affect people. But what you've just listened to there is Mary with Chris McDonough and the lab, Josh. And look, what I'm struggling with here is the fact that it's very clear that Chris McDonough hates Don Wells. He does. He hates him, and he's trying to force a narrative from one story, one crime, and a completely different time zone into a current crime. And we also saw Josh try to do the same with Candace. He stated that he basically knows that Candace must know something about Rosa's death. Now, how the fuck can anyone say that? How can anyone with a straight face say that they basically 100% know that this person had to know something? And if that isn't trying to push a narrative, then I don't know what is. And like I say, I'm not fans of Don and Candace. I'm not saying this trying to back them. I'm trying to be, how can I say, a voice that takes everything into consideration. I don't believe it's happening here. I do not believe that whatsoever. Now, with regards of Mary, look, with what happened to her, it's horrible. And, it needs to be taken seriously and it needs to be dealt with in accordance with the law. I fully get that. But this is what I'm struggling with. Now, these bunch here on here are clearly, it's fun and games. It's laughing. Even Mary herself is making fun and games, and I cut a little segment out of it because they were the introduction of Don's son into this conversation, and I just felt that it just annoyed me. The more I listened to it, I just thought, you're just laughing and joking, you're making a mockery of the seriousness of it. And some people say they're just trying to make it light-hearted or whatever. No, they were taking the piss about it and having a laugh about it. And that tells you a lot about the true effects that these things have on a victim. Now, Mary is she's stating there that she feels sorry for Don's son. She is saying that she feels sorry for him because of his upbringing. And then she goes on to explain how he had a shit upbringing, and at a certain age he was in and out of trouble that resulted him going to prison at around 19 years old. Well, not being funny, Mary, but you're basically saying the exact same scenario as that Don went through. Don obviously didn't have a great upbringing either. He was in and out of trouble. He went to prison or youth offenders, whatever it was, at 17 years old. So his upbringing, his background, and his story is the exact same as his son's. The only difference in that story is that his victims are not you. So how can you be a victim advocate for people who are victims of sexual crimes, but then say that you feel sorry for somebody because of their upbringing? When we look at the fundamentals of your perpetrator in your story, it's no different. They were sculpted from a young age to be a certain way, no different than that got passed down. This is like a generational thing. This is something that's haunted this family since day dot. It's the same as Candace and her inability to parent properly, to love and cherish her children. That comes down. And it's just becoming farcical. It's becoming farcical that these people are just so blinkered. They are so focused and hell-bent on destroying an individual that they're losing focus of everything else. Now, let's just put this into context. Now, Don has not been convicted yet. He very well could, but there's a long way to go, because these crimes were 40 years ago. He was, when it started, he was a child. And yes, there's arguments, and I get that, but he deserves due process. And just because of these crimes, it doesn't mean that he directly hurt someone. He could indeed know something. He could know what happened. He could. And we can't appreciate how this happened and how this went down unless someone in this inner circle tells us. We don't know. And I have never been put in a position where my child has been hurt because of the negligence, perhaps, of my partner, and I've got to make a decision on whether to destroy my entire family or protect my family. Until we're put in that position, we can only speculate on how we would react. And that would be based off of who we are, how we was raised, our background, our upbringing, our morals. And our upbringing and all of that could be very different than somebody else's that will sculpt them very, very different. So there's a lot more to this. There's a lot more to take into consideration. We do not know what happened yet. But this situation with Mary and this crossing it over into some story and using it to create a monster of this story, it's just wrong. And it's becoming a mockery. And I ask you again, let me know down below, how can a victim of a crime of a sexual nature say on one hand that they feel sorry for a convicted sexual criminal because of their upbringing, etc., etc., but then they want to crucify another whose story is exactly the same? When I can only think of two things, and that is that it only matters to them because they're the victim in this story and they're not really an advocate at all. They just want to punish the person who hurt them, or even darker, and that is that they just want to please Chris McDonough. Let me know down below. Hold on, later on there will be another video and we'll be looking at Don Wells' letter, the first of, I'm guessing, a few that will come out over the next few days. I'll catch you all soon. Take care.